Greetings, everybody. This is David Avocado Wolfe. I'm joined by Jeffrey Smith of the Institute for Responsible Technology right here at his house in the San Francisco Bay Area. I drove many, many miles to be here.
1,500 miles. I must be an important guy. If this guy came from Canada, well,
Edmonton, all the way from Edmonton to San Francisco.
You had some other business, but let's just say you came to see me.
This man is so important for dealing with the upcoming threats and already existing threats and past damage of GMOs, informing us, alerting us, making us aware of what's happening on the scientific front line. I just wanted to ask you before we get too far into that stuff, we've already been dealing with GMOs for years.
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that GMOs were or it was glyphosate, which is used to protect GMO crops, was even found in rain.
Yes, 60 to 100% of all rain samples and air samples in the Midwest, 75% in Mississippi. It's out there, huge numbers.
So we have glyphosate, which is
It's the chief poison in Roundup, to be clear.
Yes, and it's an herbicide, and what else? I mean, tell us about the damage that these GMOs and glyphosate have done over the last, how long has it been going on? 40 years?
23 years since the main GMOs were introduced.
Okay.
So here's an interesting thing. When you look at 30 top diseases and disorders and you chart them, and then you put on the amount of glyphosate-based herbicides that have been sprayed on GMO soy and corn, or the amount of percentage of GMO of corn and soy that's genetically engineered, there is a very, very tight correlation. For example, autism prevalence in 6-year-olds. If it was a perfect correlation, it would be 1. It's 0.997. It's just ridiculous. Now, correlation alone, as you and I know, doesn't prove anything. But that's if you realize that the modes of action of Roundup and GMOs would predict all of these different diseases. And we'll talk about the diseases and we'll talk about why in just a second. Now, what's also interesting, people used to come up to me, David, and say, I can tell when I ate a GMO. And this was early days, and I'm like, oh, really? Well, did you have I would ask questions, but I was skeptical.
Yeah, they could actually tell.
And I'm embarrassed because I was so skeptical. And then I was the person that had the honor of bringing the documented health dangers of GMOs to the medical profession at many, many conferences. They were alarmed. They started prescribing non-GMO and organic diets, and they told me when they put their patients on non-GMO diets, they'd have these dramatic recoveries, sometimes within days. And then I said, can I come to your clinic and videotape? And I did, and it was incredible. And I went to farm.
You made a film on that.
Yeah, I went. Yeah, the most recent film is called Secret Ingredients, about individuals who switched to organic, and autistic kids are no longer autistic. Infertile couples have kids. People who had cancer, skin conditions.
Great film.
Oh.
I'm going to put the link below. We'll put it in the comments below, just above the comments in the description, and then you'll be able to access that film. Okay, keep going.
All right. So I started asking audiences, what did you notice when you got better when you switched? What got better when you switched to non-GMO? And people would tell me. And one person I remember said, erectile dysfunction. It was a woman in the back, and I went, okay, raise your hand if you've had erectile dysfunction. All right. So, but it was a lot of different disorders. It was 28 of them. I wrote them down. And the number one was always digestive, and then it was fatigue and brain fog, and there was weight loss and anxiety and depression. So we saw this in 150 lectures, including about 24 medical conferences where the people were not speaking on behalf of themselves, but on behalf of thousands of patients. Same pattern. So we surveyed 3,256 people, and they got better from the 28 conditions, and digestion was number 1, and fatigue was number 2, and overweight was number 3, and brain fog was 4, and anxiety and depression was 5, and then food sensitivities and allergies. And we're still above 50% of everyone who responded got better in those things.
Jeez.
I mean, it was 85% noticed an improvement in digestion, and it wasn't a minor improvement. 80% of those, it was either significant, nearly gone, or completely cured.
Jeez.
So we're talking
just
about
from switching over to organic and getting off the GMO food.
Yes.
Jeez, that's so crazy.
So when we have that information, now consider what's happening in livestock. The veterinarians and farmers who take the livestock off of GMOs and put them on non-GMO, not even necessarily organic, they're getting better from the same type of problems. Pet owners and veterinarians for pets are seeing the same thing with pets. And we see the same problems rising, especially in children, the pediatricians are telling us. And if you force feed lab animals GMOs or Roundup, they suffer from these same different diseases.
Right.
So we have a pattern that's like
Pretty
airtight.
compelling. Yeah, it's pretty compelling.
So now let's just take a look at Roundup. You have GMOs can cause problems. They produce it. Some produce insecticides.
Just GMOs, because some people say, what is GMO? Genetically modified organisms. So a lot of times we'll say GMO versus GMF instead of genetically modified foods. Just to clarify that, because we're talking about they're genetically modifying bacteria, plants, animals, everything, insects, all kinds of things.
And we have a situation now where the process of genetic engineering creates massive collateral damage in the DNA, which can give rise to allergens and toxins and new diseases. For example, Roundup Ready corn has 200 different levels of metabolites and proteins, including higher levels of my favorite words here, putrescine and cadaverine.
Oh, geez.
They're responsible
those don't sound
no, not really my favorite
very
words.
enticing
Yeah,
there.
it's like they're responsible for the foul odor of rotting dead bodies. And also they're linked to cancer and allergies and bad breath. Those are
That has more of it in it.
more of it in Roundup. But the thing is, let's just focus on Roundup, because you asked the question about Roundup and why Roundup could be contributing to so many of the diseases. It is like the perfect disaster. It undermines virtually every foundation of health. And I'm going to name these foundations and see if I missed anything, because Roundup is just incredibly bad, especially the glyphosate. First of all, it's a chelator. It binds with minerals, making them unavailable.
Okay.
So it was actually originally
Or it can bind with a mineral and then bring it across the blood-brain barrier, like aluminum. I've heard that about glyphosate.
It also brings supposedly arsenic through the body and then gets to the kidneys, and then it breaks apart and poisons the kidneys, which is responsible for this kidney disease that's running rampant in Sri Lanka and the Central America.
Okay.
So it is a chelator. It deprives minerals from the body, and that in itself is linked to a long list of diseases. It is patented as that. It's patented as an antibiotic, but it's a special antibiotic, David. It's the only one we know about that preferentially kills the beneficial stuff and not the pathogens. So when you do a test on a human test in this particular very advanced model, it reduces the biodiversity, increases the pathogens, reduces the short-chain fatty acids, reduces all the good stuff, and those changes alone can be correlated to 30 different diseases in terms of the direction it's going. It also can cause gaps between cells, the tight junctions, causing leaky gut, leaky brain, leaky organs. We become sponges for toxins. Leaky gut is linked to cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, inflammation,
sepsis.
All these things.
Big uptick in all those diseases, including sepsis recently. This is so crazy. Okay, keep going. This is really rough.
It damages and blocks what's called the shikimate pathway,
Yep.
which is what bacteria use in our guts to create the precursors to serotonin, melatonin, and dopamine. So that could explain the anxiety and depression and the correlation with insomnia and sleep disorders and pain as well, and Parkinson's.
Which have all been going up right along glyphosate
Right,
use, right?
absolutely.
Just correlated right there. Okay, keep going.
It also can damage the hormones at various levels. The aromatase, which creates the ratio of estrogen and testosterone.
Right, so if you have an aromatase problem, you can take a good hormone like testosterone and it flips over and becomes a bad hormone like a toxic estrone. That's very dangerous.
Wow.
Okay, that's crazy right there. So it disturbs that.
It disturbs it. It disturbs it at medium levels. We don't know at low levels. We don't have enough research. It also creates cancer through oxidative stress, genotoxicity, and other reasons. And so it is a probable human carcinogen, according to the World Health Organization, for humans. It is a definite carcinogen for animals, because there's enough studies that they can say it causes cancer in animals.
My God.
It damages, here's a brilliant study that just came out. I just reported on it through our list. There's something called gap junctions, not the tight junctions. Gap junctions are what allow one cell to communicate with others, creating the network. So it destroys intercellular communication, and that's known to create many different diseases, including cancer. So that's one of the mechanisms for how it causes cancer and other problems. It also drops the NRF2, which allows the cells to detox. And also it disturbs the P450 cytochrome pathways, which in those enzymes allow the liver to detox.
Yep.
So now we're in a situation where the detoxification pathways in the liver and throughout the body are blocked, or disrupted, which means all the other toxins that are supposed to be ushered out are wreaking havoc. It also is a mitochondrial toxin.
Oh my God.
So what it does is it can destroy actin, which is like a structural foundation for our cells and some nerves. And someone thinks that by looking at it in the microscope, that when the actin is destroyed, the whole mitochondria just collapse in themselves. And he's seen it, and we know that it's a mitochondrial toxin. There's peer-reviewed research, but he actually has seen it under a microscope how it works. So it's incredibly damaging. It's what's called a teratogen, which means it can create birth defects. In fact,
that's so nuts. I mean, okay, I got to ask you this question. This is something I'm sure everybody's wondering. How does this stuff get pushed through and become legal? How in the world? Like, how many people got bought off? How many checkbook scientists were written in? How much corruption is going on?
It is such a good question. I think we should do a separate one.
Okay, just on that.
On that, and we will bring up the Monsanto trial that was bolstered with millions of documents that were freed up from Monsanto's inner sanctum. We have text messages and email messages, and I ended up on television because I had debated someone who was from Roundup who lied on television, and I got to show it to the producer, and we'll talk about that next.
Okay, we're going to do that in the next video. Stay tuned with us. David Avocado Wolfe, joined by Jeffrey Smith, Institute for Responsible Technology. Check that out down there in the description, and we'll also get your film in the description as well. Cheers.